I want to give you a brief introduction to the optical image stabilization capabilities that the DVX200 has. Now, yeah, we all know what O.I.S is and what it does, and if you're trying to hold the camera steady on a subject, handheld, and especially at long telephoto, that can be very challenging. I mean, in this shot, I'm trying to hold the camera as steady as I possibly can, and you can tell it's not really working. But when you turn on O.I.S, wow, I mean, it really cleans it up and it makes it look a lot more stable. So the O.I.S really works well for compensating out panning and tilting motion. But there are other types of motions that could come into play. If you're handheld, what if it rolls a little bit side to side? O.I.S can't really compensate for that. Or just straight shifting from one side to the other, or shifting up and down. Well, actually, the DVX200 has a way to compensate for all of that too. If you're in FHD mode, not UHD and not 4K, but FHD, you can turn on the hybrid image stabilization, and that gives you even more stabilization capability. It compensates for rolling and shifting up and down, side to side. If you're doing a 1080 only project, this optical image stabilization combined with the hybrid image stabilization is very, very effective. The DVX200 actually has the ability to program the optical image stabilization to make it more suitable to the type of shooting scenarios that you're in. There are two parameters that you can control. You can control the frequency, whether it's little motions happening very frequently or infrequently, and you can also control the amplitude, which is the size of the motion. So maybe you're trying to compensate out a little tiny vibration or a big sweeping motion. That's the amplitude or the frequency. And without getting into too much detail, I'll give you a few examples of what you might set this to for certain scenarios. Let's say that you are handheld and you're trying to hold as still as possible. In that case, the only motion that the camera may encounter will be tiny little motions, little twitches that you make. So in cases like that, you might get the best performance by setting the amplitude to 1 and the frequency also to 1. But what if you're not standing still? What if you're not trying to hold the camera super steady? What if you're actually having to move with the shot? What if you're doing like a walk and talk interview? Well, you're still going to want those little motions compensated for, but you're also going to need to compensate for big motions too. So in this case, maybe you'll get the best performance by setting the blur amplitude to 5, but you'll still set the frequency to 1. But what if we're not hand-holding it? What if we're on a tripod? Do we even use O.I.S at that point? Generally, the advice in the camcorder community is no. You turn O.I.S off when you're on a tripod. However, I'll give you a scenario where it actually could come in handy. Let's say you're dealing with a situation that might introduce some vibration or shakes to the tripod. You're filming a political convention, you're in a hotel ballroom, and the speaker's way across the room at a podium, so you're super telephoto. And your camera's up on a wooden platform. Now, generally, you're not going to be moving the camera at all. It's going to be locked down. But what if somebody comes walking by on that platform? That could introduce a little bit of judder or shake into the image. And on a rolling shutter camera, that can look kind of rubbery. It doesn't look great. I found that the O.I.S can actually be very helpful in this. If you set the custom O.I.S to off, you don't need custom O.I.S for this particular scenario. Or if you do set it on, set it to 1 and 1. If the camera's not moving, if you're doing a lockdown shot, the O.I.S can do a wonderful job of absorbing out those little vibrations and giving you a much more stable image. Different scenario on the tripod is, what if the camera's moving a lot? Let's say you're filming a sports event, or maybe you're doing a kid's dance recital and you're constantly panning between the kids and you're moving the camera a lot. Well, then you don't want to use custom O.I.S of 1 and 1. That won't work for you because that's designed for tiny little motions. You want to allow for the big sweeping motion. So then in this scenario, you probably get better results by setting the amplitude to 5 and the frequency to 3. So summing it all up, the O.I.S system here is kind of fantastic. It gives really solid, really good results in normal mode, but if you're in a situation where you're shooting 1080 and you turn on that hybrid mode, I mean, it's so good, I think, that there are times when I can leave the tripod at home. You get a situation where you jam your elbows in, you put the camera up to your eye so you get that 3 points of stabilization and turn on the hybrid. You can get tripod-looking results sometimes, especially at wider angle. And then, on top of all that, you have the ability to fine-tune the O.I.S with the custom system to give you even better results under certain shooting scenarios. I think it's a really neat system. You definitely owe it to yourself to experiment with it. And if you're in a certain challenging situation, like, trying to shoot out of a helicopter or something, you may be able to get better results by fine-tuning it. Hope this has been helpful. Hope this has helped give you a better idea of how the O.I.S capabilities work, and if you need more tips and tricks on how to use your DVX200, see the other videos in this series. Thanks for watching.